Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
So today we're talking about something, I love this topic because it comes up every time I talk to a business owner who's trying to move to the next level, right? Or really anybody that's trying to move to the next level in their life. I talk to a lot of business owners, so that's where my brain goes. But it's this concept of achieving work-life balance.
Right. Yeah. And it's definitely something that comes up, especially when you actually have a family. You know, it's one thing if you're single and let's say you're in your early 20s and you're working at your career. I remember my balance wasn't there. It was all about career and building that. And I think that's fine, you know, if that's where you are in your stages of life, or you decided, listen, I'm going to get things rocking. And then I'm going to settle down a little bit. You got to be careful because sometimes you end up you're 40 years old or 50 years old, you haven't settled down yet. And not that you can't, and there's no judgment on people that do that. But there's a balance. I think thinking long term and what you really want, it will help with this for sure.
Yeah. Well, like there's a meme that floats around every so often that says adulting is saying I'll get to it next week until I'm dead. Like that's It's just like saying that over and over again. Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about balance is, you know, I think when people think balance, they confuse it with equality. Right. You know, so like when people think balance, they think, okay, I'm going to spend 8 hours at work, I'm going to spend 8 hours at home, and I'm going to sleep for 8 hours, right? And which is balance,
right?
You know what I mean, like that is as equal as you get.
Yeah,
but when I think of that in my head, it sounds so sterile, like just like it doesn't sound like a very exciting life. It feels more droning, you know, than I think what a lot of people experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does, and I think going on, like we're setting this up, but the first step is kind of talking about this, and it's redefining or defining what balance is to you, and that's kind of what we're talking about. So I think we can sort of get into it as we're still getting things going. So you have to the seasons in your life, like I alluded to earlier, like if you're late teens, early 20s, you're getting your education, you might be starting a career. If you don't go to college, you go to trade school or whatever. And, you know, I think especially in your 20s, you got to really hustle. You got to work hard. That's where you should have the most energy, the most ambition. You have the most of your life ahead of you. So you want to set a good foundation. And not to say that you can't have a family in your early 20s, because that happens with people. You know, here we go again, up and down. But if that's fine, and I had friends that started their family in the early 20s, I waited until I was 30 to have a family. You can make either of them work. You know, this works for me, that worked for them, you know. But it's defining what balance is for you. Maybe it is working 12 hours a day, and then when you're home, you know. So I think it just takes some thought, some writing down on pen and paper for sure.
Yeah, and I think it changes, you know, and I think exactly what you said. You know, there's seasons of your life, but you know, one of the key components that you touched on is you have to be careful, you know, not to just grind, you know, because you'll have time for other things later. I think that's one of those regrets that people have when they're getting older. You know, but things. I think if you think of it this way, things that are solid weigh more. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you have those parts of your life that are solid, that are working, you know, they're going to weigh the scale down heavier, you know, where the things that you're light on are going to be higher. So you're going to have to put more time and energy into that during those times, you know. So I think, you know, redefining balance is something you have to do not just once, you know, like you can't just say, okay, today I'm going to redefine what balance is for me, because it changes. But I think it's looking at your life right now and saying, what does balance look like? You know, like what does my day look like if it's balanced, and then try to work toward that.
Yeah, and you can work from, okay, what is it going to look like in the next 5 or 10 years, so a little bit longer term. I think it might be difficult to say, okay, in 20 years this is where my balance is going to be, because you don't know. You know, I think 10 years is a possibility. 5 years is usually a good length of time. It's long enough to get some perspective, but also not too long where you don't know where you're going to be. So if you're 20 and at 25, your energy and education and all that you're learning, but it's going to be relatively the same. But 20 to 40, there's a big difference. How I felt at 30 versus how I felt at 40 versus how I felt at 50. There's definitely a difference in there, and I had to adjust and make things. That's why I think 5 years is a
Yeah.
good term for that. And then, like you alluded to, is you work your way down. You know, where do you define after the 5 years, the 1 year, and then what do you want to do each month, and I think ultimately getting down daily. You know, you take your week and what's your balance for the week. Are you going to work 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then have 2 days off, you know, for the weekend? That can work, especially if those 2 days you're truly taking off and it's devoted to family. There's many people that travel throughout the week. You know, they might travel 3, 4, even 5 days out of the week, and they're only home on weekends. They make it work. You know, they
Yeah.
balance it out. It's when you bring your work home with you, or you bring your home to work with you. That's where the balance doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
No, and I like that because that cascades really nice into our second thing, and that's what are we, where are we when we're in certain
Right.
places,
Right.
because I think, I've been at work many times and my brain has not been there, or my brain's been
Yeah.
home, or my brain's been distracted. And then, I mean, I know this happens. I'm probably not the only one, but sometimes I go home for that home time and I'm on my phone, or I'm watching
Yeah.
TV, or I'm
Right.
distracted, right? And I'm
Right.
not, I'm near the people I'm supposed to be with, but I'm not
Right.
with them.
Right. 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 Yep. Yep. And so it's basically be where you are. You
Yeah.
know, um, be in the present. Make sure that it's okay to plan family time, you know, but it's also okay to be spontaneous. I think if you're planning a trip, we plan a vacation. Oftentimes we do that. We put a lot of focus into that. But that's the only time we really truly plan, and we don't plan out our day or a week to have those times. You know,
Yeah.
you could even do where maybe your lunch hour is dedicated to a little bit of family time instead of
Yep.
just lunch. Instead of going to lunch with your fellow coworkers, you could do family time, whether you do a FaceTime or you live close enough to go home, whatever the case is. I mean, you can get creative with it, and everybody's scenario is going to be slightly different that you got to modify. But if you have the goal of, this is what I want a good balance, and this is what I need. What does your spouse need, or your significant other?
Yeah.
Do they need you around more? You know, do you have young kids and you need to be physically present? Then that's going to change and adjust.
Hmm.
Are your kids grown and out of the house? That's going to change too. So, and you talked about that in the beginning
Yeah.
with the lead up to this, is the different seasons you are in your life.
Yeah.
You know, that makes a difference.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's just tremendous power in looking around. There's
Yeah.
tremendous power in taking that quick minute when you're sitting on the couch at home and looking at who else is in the room with me.
Yeah.
And am I here? Like, am I
Mm-hmm.
present?
Yeah.
Being on the phone on a work call, and I mean, Zoom calls. Oh my God, Zoom calls, right? Like,
Yeah.
how often do you see people on Zoom calls who are completely checked out?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
you're gonna be there, I forget who told me this, but they said if you're gonna be there, be there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's such a great tip when we're talking about balance, because you can spend 8 hours a day at work and 8 hours a day at home, but if you're not there and you're in other places in your head, it's not going to be quality time, and you're not going to get that juice that you need out of that time.
Well, you think about the day or two before you go on vacation.
Hmm.
Typically for most people are the most productive days, because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gone for 10 days, or I'm gone for 2 weeks or whatever, and I got to get this done because it needs to be done before I leave, because otherwise it won't get done, or whatever, I have a deadline, whatever the case is. And all of a sudden you find the focus to get those things done and get more productive. Well, how can we do that more on a daily basis? Because oftentimes we waste so much time. We're working, we're there for 8 hours, let's say, or 10 hours, but we're really only working for 6 or 5 because we've done other things. You know, we've checked our email, or we're going through Facebook, we're scrolling, whatever the case is, and we're really not working, and we're not home either. So it's a double thing that we're not doing.
Yeah, I mean, talking about vacation, just to one more like cap on this, I think it's interesting because a lot of my friends, when they go on vacation, they tell me they're not really on vacation until the second or even the third day,
Yeah, yeah,
because their brain is still checking in,
yeah.
with work and with
Hmm.
things. But by the third day, or the second or third day, kind of the phone's in the pocket and the emails are not as concerning.
Yeah,
And, but I think that's 100% right. Is it's just using that time productively and making sure that, once those feet hit the sand on the beach on your vacation,
yeah.
your brain's on the sand too.
Right.
Don't get
Yeah.
sand in your brain though.
No, don't get sand in your brain.
Yeah.
And then the third one, and this is when you're there, is find joy in the present.
Mhm.
And this can sound, woo, find joy in the present, and okay, easy for you to say, and sometimes it's not easy to do that. I think, like we talk all the time about gratitude. What are you grateful for? What are the good things in your life? That's going to help with joy. Um, but being here, being present, I think it's obviously important at work to be productive, but it's super important at home. That you're not bringing work home with you. You're not on your phone when you're with your family, but you're focused on them.
Yeah. So I was talking to one of my friends is a contractor locally. And we were talking about this the other day. And he said, well, the reason people need work-life balance is because, or just balance in general, it's something you like versus something you like less typically.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? So like when people say work-life balance, I'm generalizing, but when a lot of
Yeah,
people say this, it's because, well, they don't really like work, but they really like being at home.
yeah.
So I need to balance those things.
Hmm.
But in reality, like if you had more home time and less work time, eventually that would get out of balance and you'd still want less.
Right.
Like as humans, like we would love to just sit around and not do things a lot.
Yeah.
So what he said that I thought was really interesting, he said, well, what if you just love your job,
Hmm.
and you love your home? Now
Right.
the
Right.
whole need for balance is kind of gone, because your
Yeah.
life is kind of complete, right? Everything
Right.
works.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, yeah, I think that's very, very important. And this is going to take work. I mean, these are things that you probably already know, a lot of the things that we said, but we're putting them together like we do in a three-step action plan. But a lot of it's common sense too. The problem is we forget oftentimes, and we get stuck, and we get into these ruts and into these habits that aren't leading us to the right place, like the habit of always picking up our phone. We hear a ding, and we're going to check our notifications. That's one thing if you're working and you're expecting things, and that's fine. But if you're home, silence your phone or actually put it away. I mean, do you are you tied to your phone? Like if you're a surgeon and you're on call, that's different, right? You're home, but also you have to pay attention if if the phone rings and you get called in. But if you have a job that when you leave that job, you're you don't really have to think about it, then you need to make time, and that's how you're going to get more joy, because
Yeah,
otherwise you're not kind of leading into what we talked about. You're not present,
right.
but that's all part of that joy.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I definitely think, people who hate their job, I mean, you can get a new job. Like
Right.
that's an option. Or, you can just start to like your job. You can
Right.
find, I mean, find joy is work.
Right. Yeah.
sometimes in your head it feels like BS.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
it is a lot of times
Yeah.
you're creeping for those things that you like about
Hmm.
it. But if you do it enough,
Yep.
eventually it's going to settle in and you're going to find real stuff that you
Yep.
enjoy.
Yep.
I mean, if you hate doing certain things with your family, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you hate grocery shopping with your family, you cannot go, but then you're
Yeah.
missing out on that time.
Right.
Or you can find, something you like about it and, kind of put a smile on
Yeah.
your face and go do the thing. I think
Right.
that's part of this. So
Right.
anyway, finding that joy in the present, I think it's a hard step, but it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. All right. So let's review. So step one is you have to define or redefine, whatever the case is. What is your meaning of balance? What are the hours? What does it mean to you to be balanced with work and your rest of your life?
Yeah. Number two, be where you are. So really take time to, sit where you are, look around, and be more present.
Yep. And then step three is find the joy. Find the joy while you're there. Find the joy when you're home, and then find joy in your work. I think most people can if you search hard enough.
Yeah. And once you like everything, there's no more need for balance. It all
Right.
works out. So,
Right.
and that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Share this with somebody who needs balance, somebody who would like this episode, and we will see you on the next show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.